Hey there. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. Cerise Fairfax here. How you guys doing? I hope you're all doing well and that your day is blessed thus far. Welcome to Story Time. I'm located in a beautiful little neighborhood called Los Chiramicos in a town by the name of Sosua in a province called Puerto Plata on an island called the Dominican Republic. That's right, guys. And this story time comes to me from somebody who used to live in Sosua. A gentleman sent me this story, and he pretty much was embarrassed about it, but this is the kicker. He is still in the process of figuring things out. All right, let's get to the backdrop. Let's call this gentleman, let's call him Carlos. So Carlos is a Dominican man. He was born in Santo Domingo. His mom died when he was very young, so he moved to Santiago with his grandmother. When he was in Santiago, his grandmother died as well, about 4 years after. So he moved to Sosua to be with his sister. He was very young when he got here, and his sister had a friend. Now, his sister was 4 years older than him, and this friend of his sister's was 7 years older than him. Now, when he moved here to Sosua, he was only 13 years old. He met this friend of his sister, and he had the hugest crush on her, but she kept telling him he was too young, too young. But one night she got drunk, and she had a little something with him. He told me, Cerise, I was only 13, but I was going on 14, and I looked like I was going on 25. I couldn't blame the woman. Let's give this woman a name. Let's call her Caroline. So him and Caroline slept together, and she ended up getting pregnant. Now, Caroline knew it was his baby because, well, she was careful with everyone else, and she was not intimate with anyone else for a while. What happened was she ended up keeping the baby. We'll call the baby Chloe. So she ended up keeping the baby. Now, the two of them actually tried to work out in a relationship. The sister, Carlos's sister, forced them together. She said, listen, I understand that you're a lot older than my brother, but my brother does need stability, and you can offer him that. And he is a lot more mature than his age because of what he's been through in life. So take my brother in, let him live with you, let him help you with the baby, and things will move forward. Now, Caroline herself was only 20. She was very young, but she was able to take care of herself because of some of the guys that would come here and give her money. Now, she was not a working girl per se, but I guess you could call her a chapiadora, a girl that, gets with a guy for financial reasons or for material gain. So that's what she was, and she would give everything to Carlos. She ended up really falling in love with Carlos. Carlos said to me, Cerise, I was tall, I was fair, and I was handsome. So he was a good guy, so to speak, in regards to staying out of trouble and taking care of his baby Chloe. And he did very good for 6 months. But when Chloe was 6 months old, he started to go out a lot. He told me he started to get tired. He took care of Chloe the whole entire time. Like the mother, Caroline, she was going out and she was doing what she wanted to do. He said he felt like he was the little brother at home taking care of the little sister instead of taking care of his daughter. So when Chloe turned 6 months, there was a foreigner that moved into town who was 4 years older than Carlos. And they used to go out together. and they started to go out with each other during the night, and they would go to the casino, and they would hang around a lot of the foreigners. And Caroline found out that Carlos started to cheat on her. So Caroline left Carlos, wouldn't let him see the baby any longer, and shortly thereafter, Caroline moved to the United States. Yes, one of the men that she was with picked up and left to the United States and sent for her. But he knew she had a child, and he also sent for the child because the foreigner also knew that Carlos was very young and that Carlos was going to be doing what he was doing, and there was not ever going to be any type of a relationship per se. So the foreigner knew that Caroline would be his. And she was. She moved to the States and never contacted Carlos again. Fast forward 20 years. Carlos is on the beach, Playa Sosua, chilling out, relaxing, enjoying his day, when all of a sudden, a beautiful young girl walks by. Now, he was floored. He'd never seen her before. She was gorgeous. And he just immediately jumped up and he said, "Can I help you with something?" And she said, "Oh, no, I'm just looking around, relaxing myself. I just got here." And he said, "Excuse me, can I ask you, are you Dominican?" And she said, "Well, no, I'm American, but my parents are Dominican." And he said, I see. And he's like, "Where are they from in the Dominican Republic?" And she said, "Well, I heard my dad is from the capital, and I heard my mom is from here in Sosua." And he said, "Well, what's your mom's name? I've been living here for a while. What's your mother's name?" And she said, "My mom's name's Teresa Mendez, but her last name is Mendez. I don't know what my mom's maiden name is." And he said, "Why don't you know this information? Do you not know your mother?" She said, "Well, my mom died when I was very young, and I'm just pretty much coming back here to try to recollect her steps. She died of breast cancer, and I'm just trying to figure my way out here. I'm trying to find my family." And he said, "Well, you're going to need her last name. Do you have a picture of her?" And she said, "No, I don't have any photos of my mom at all." And he said, "Wow, so this is a pretty big skip and a jump." He said, "Well, maybe I can help you walk around and look for your mom. I know quite a few people here." And he's like, "You look so familiar." And she was like, "Well, a lot of people have been telling me that here since I got here, but nobody knows my mom." And he's like, "Well, I gotta tell you, Teresa Mendez does not sound like a familiar name here. And I've been living here on this island, on this part of the island for 20 years. And I know almost every Dominican woman in Sosua." And Chloe said, "Okay, well," she's like, "Yeah, I'm really tired. I'm just gonna go back to my hotel room." And he said, "Well, if you like, I can take you. I have a moto." And she said, "All right." So she went with him on his moto. She invited him in. And immediately they had a connection. She was a little bit younger than him, but she liked him. She invited him to stay for dinner. And he said to her, "My gosh, your cooking is so amazing." She said, "Thank you." And he fell in love with her that night. He did not leave that night, and she didn't want him to. Quite often that happens here. Relationships unfold in the spur of the moment. And when there's an attraction, there's an attraction. And when that affection starts, chances are it's not going to end the same night. So he stayed and he didn't leave. She was here for an entire month. When she had to leave, she said to him that she would be back. And she did. She came back. And when she came back, she had her aunt with her. And her aunt's name was Caroline. You see, Caroline was this young girl's mother. What happened was when Caroline went to America with her with the guy that she was dating at the time, they broke up. She cheated on him and he kicked her out. She could no longer take care of Chloe. Chloe was very young, only 2 years old. So she gave Chloe to her friend, who was Teresa Mendez. Now, Teresa Mendez died of breast cancer. Chloe grew up thinking that Teresa was her real mother. And when Teresa was dying, she didn't admit to Chloe that she wasn't her mother, because I guess we could only assume she didn't know how. But she told her, go to Sosua to look for your family. The reason she didn't give the name of the real mother, I don't know. Carlos says to me that he thinks it's because Chloe looks just like Caroline, just like her mother. And Teresa probably thought that as soon as she was in Sosua, somebody would recognize her and say, yes, I know your mother. But you see, nobody did put 2 and 2 together until Caroline came back. Now, Caroline was known as this girl, this Chloe's aunt. How did she become the aunt? Well, when Caroline found out that Teresa died, Caroline showed up at the funeral. And Caroline also kept the secret because she didn't want to hurt her daughter Chloe. She didn't want to confuse her daughter Chloe. And quite frankly, she had no proof. No proof at all. So when they came back here together, it was Caroline's way of admitting the truth then. She wanted to sit down with her family and tell Chloe with other people. Sit down with Chloe and break the news to her in a very loving way. On the beach, with family, with her sisters, with Caroline's sisters. So she had a plan. But when they got here, Chloe just wanted to see Carlos. So Chloe went to Carlos and said, listen, I really need you to come to a party that I'm invited to. She was told it was a party, a little gathering, a dinner gathering. She didn't realize it was going to be the truth coming out of who her mother was. So he said, absolutely, I'll go to the party with you. When they showed up to the party together, Caroline looked at Carlos, and at first she didn't recognize him. She said, you look very familiar. And he said, yes, you look familiar too. And she said, my name's Caroline. And he said, my name is Carlos. And it hit them both at the same time. And he was like, Caroline, wow, nice to see you. Have you been in the Dominican Republic long? Last thing I heard, you were in America. She said, yes, I just got here with my daughter, with our daughter, Chloe. And he said, Chloe? And she said, yes, Chloe doesn't know that I'm her mother. She was raised with a very good friend of mine who took her over and raised her very well. My friend's name was Teresa Mendez. Oh, Carlos didn't know what to do. So Carlos turned around and he said to her, he had to leave. So he went up to Chloe and he said, Chloe, listen, something has come up and I gotta run. I can't stay. I have to leave, okay? Chloe was really upset, but she understood. And she said, will you come pick me up later? Will you come to my place later? I still have the same hotel room. Carlos said, yes, I'll come to your hotel. Well, when Carlos went to the hotel, he didn't realize that Caroline would have told the truth already to Chloe. And when he arrived to the room, Chloe was crying. Chloe was sad. Chloe was depressed. Chloe looked at him and said, why did you leave? Why did you leave me like that? And he said to her he didn't know how to react. He was sleeping with his daughter. That was a big shock to him. He said, do you know what it's like to find out that you're my daughter? I couldn't stay there. That was music I couldn't face. I couldn't tell your mother that I was sleeping with our daughter. How could I do that? Caroline was in the next room. Caroline overheard them. Caroline knocked on the door. And when she walked into the room, she saw Carlos holding Chloe and wiping the hair from her face as she was crying and crying. Caroline misunderstood and thought that he was holding her because he was consoling her as a father. But he wasn't. He was consoling her as a lover. He looked up at Caroline and he said, Caroline, I'm sorry. I had no idea. Caroline still didn't understand. And she said, that's okay. I left you and I didn't tell you anything after I left. I didn't think you would care. But now seeing you hold our daughter, now seeing you give her love and being a good father, it makes me feel bad that I left you the way I did. We were both so young. And Carlos looked at her and said, no, Caroline, I'm sorry. But I love our daughter in a different way. And he said to her, I love Chloe as a wife. Now, first of all, he said to me, Caroline didn't put two and two together. And she thought he must have said, as my life, not my wife. And she said, okay. Well, okay, I don't understand. And he said to her, I want to marry Chloe. He said Chloe didn't even know at that point that he wanted to marry her. But Chloe accepted. Chloe looked up at him and said, yes, I want to marry you too. And that was it. Carlos said to me that they're still getting through the process. He said, Cerise, I'm only 13 years older than Chloe. How could I ever think that that was my daughter? He said, and after making love to her and being intimate with her, it was so easy to just fall in love with her. She's a beautiful woman. He said, and she's smart. She owns her own business. She works online. She works from the Dominican Republic now. She has since moved here. Caroline has tried to destroy their lives on social media. You could only imagine how the mother must feel. Caroline must feel like crap. She lost her daughter when her daughter was 2 because she couldn't take care of her daughter. She was never able to be around her daughter. Met her daughter when her daughter was at the funeral. Reconnected with her daughter for a brief period. Came here to the Dominican Republic to pretend as if she was going to help Chloe find her family. But she had her own plan, and everything was sabotaged. How sad. You have a child at 20 for a 13-year-old. You feel like your life is being saved. You move to America. You make the mistake of cheating on a very good man, and you lose everything. You feel like you regain everything back, and then you lose it again. Well, Carlos said to me, he feels very sorry for Caroline. He doesn't know what to do. He really doesn't know how to handle the situation when it comes to Caroline, but he understands her pain. He says when it comes to Chloe, Chloe has adjusted so well. She doesn't look at either one of them as her parents. Caroline, she doesn't even care about. She says Teresa is her mother. And then when it comes to Carlos, she calls Carlos Carlos. She doesn't call him Dad. So it's a very sad story. It's a story that a lot of hearts, a lot of love, a lot of confusion is involved. But at the end of the day, I guess all we can do is send prayers to them. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for subscribing, and thank you for hitting that like button.